Nina and Lisa, you've been with me all day. We'll, we'll get ourselves going. Thanks again for joining us as people are popping into the meeting. That's great. My name is Anna Perry. I'm the Executive Director of Seton Montessori Institute and Schools. And I am happy to see so many familiar faces and some new friends as well. And so we're using these sessions as a kind of an intro to Zoom for those who have been thrown into virtual sharing and building of community, how to do it well. This afternoon's session, I've left with a longer time frame because I'm hoping that you will also be able to share what you are using Zoom for so far, if you are using it. But I'd also like to use this opportunity, since it's all Montessori folks here and we're all learning how to use this. I'm going to try and build in some show and tell of the different features that are available through Zoom, like I did for the two earlier sessions. And the recordings for the two earlier sessions should be showing up on Seton's social media by this evening. I'm uploading them to YouTube, and then I will post the links onto Facebook and LinkedIn as they are available. But and those are the questions that are coming up. So if you haven't yet discovered the chat, I'm going to ask that you answer a question that I'm going to post. Located and you served. All right. So you have a question from me to answer in the chat box as we get going, so that you know where the chat is. I'd also, if you're considering hosting these meetings, I'd encourage you to leave open the chat box and the participants section so that you get used to kind of how to navigate these different areas of Zoom. Use this experience as part of your own orientation to this. And the sun just came out, so all the adjusting I did before of my lighting has to adjust a little bit. So I'm in a different space if you were with me in for the two morning sessions. And we'll give this a try so that you can just see the differences. I'm also using a different camera this time around. Since I do a lot of these Zoom sessions for adult learners, I have a HD camera. But this one is less of a how-to on Zooming in general. Other details to point out: you have a mute button in your bottom left-hand corner. You also, right next to that, I'm leaving everyone muted for this meeting because it is a larger group. Right next to that is a video camera button. I would encourage you to turn it on if you're willing to try it out, just so you get used to this sharing experience. This is a pretty safe crowd. And it lets you assess your own lighting, your own background. What do I need to adjust? How can I make it as appealing a space as possible? They have recently come out with something called virtual backgrounds within Zoom, which if you go into your Zoom preferences, it's not something I advocate for if you have a way of cleaning up your background. But if you have a lot going on in your home while you have to do this, first of all, make sure you're wearing headphones with a microphone, because that helps minimize the sound. But you can play with the virtual backgrounds. I'm going to show you one here just for the fun of it. Look, I'm in Slovenia. This was a lake near the mountains that I visited a few years ago. You can put a different kind of backdrop, and it actually blocks out if you have children working in the background or any other kind of chaos going on, but it makes for some visual distraction for your participants. So for children, I would avoid doing this. But if it's an adult meeting and you're working from home and you have a little bit of chaos, or you're just looking to mix things up because you've been doing a lot of Zooming and you want to play with it, have some fun with uploading some pictures. I can do San Francisco, I can do grass, I can be in outer space, just silliness. But it does work to block out things in your background. Okay, enough of the fun and games. One other feature that Zoom offers The preference button, Michaela asked, is if you go up to zoom.us and you pull down your preferences, or you hit Command comma, I think, on PCs and Macs, you'll find your preferences for Zoom. And that's where you can adjust which camera you're using, how your audio sounds, if you're using headphones or not. If there's a mic issue or anything, you can work it out there. Since we do have new people joining us, and since we haven't yet talked about polls, I thought I'd show you the poll function. I'm going to send out a poll, and I'm going to ask that you answer the questions. It is multiple choice, so you can answer more than one if more than one applies. So you can, if you were doing a parent meeting and you wanted to ask a quick question, you can preload questions, um, and you can ask people to weigh in pretty easily. The other one that I use often is asking people, thumbs up or thumbs down. Is this your first time? Are you familiar with Zoom? I could ask, and you would show thumbs up, thumbs down. But I thought we'd try out the poll for the fun of it. So 43% have never used Zoom before. Welcome to the world of Zooming. And 52% never used it before this week. A few, 6% are using it for staff meetings. Some are using it for parent meetings. And then 19% are using it for children. Here, I'm going to show you the results. Look at that. So a lot of people brand new to Zoom. That's great. I'm glad you were able to join us today. And I will post the recordings onto Seton's Facebook site. Will be the first place it'll drop. All right, so I'm going to close the poll results. Under which tab is preferences on a laptop? I don't know. It depends on what kind of laptop you have. But if you look, if you're on, I don't speak PC. I'm on a Mac. For me, when I click on zoom.us, then it shows up with an option for preferences, or I can hit Command comma. And Command comma should be the same toggle on a PC as it is on a Mac. If you're on a PC, can you verify that? Yes? No? Is everybody here on a Mac? Oh, good, Maria. So that worked. So try Command comma, and it should pop up your preferences. Okay, so our afternoon topic is working with young children, serving our communities of young children. This is Brave New World. This is where I'm really not an expert at all. I'm pulling in information that I have been experimenting with over the last week. I'm happy to share what we're planning to do in the week going forward as we evolve our programs. We can talk a little bit about what we're doing at the elementary level, but let's save that for the end, because what we really signed up for this time was talking about building community with younger children. And this was when we first started talking about the potential of a closing. It was really the teacher's first reaction was, oh, we would never do anything on a screen with young children. And at that point, we were thinking maybe we'd be closed for a couple of days to clean. But now in the state of Illinois, at least, we're in a shelter-in-place order until early April, with a lot of potential for longer. So we're all really moving quickly towards embracing technologies that we never would have been suggesting in normal contexts, but this is not normal. What I can say after a week of Zooming with children and with parents actively is that it really is a beautiful experience. It helps if you prepare it and you do it with a lot of intention. Think through how to make it as Montessori an experience as possible. And my advocacy for this comes down to the point that when you're screen sharing, when you're video conferencing with children or with parents, it's not the same as passively watching a movie. I like it better than sharing a video of a teacher doing something at home, frankly. We have teachers who are recording things at home and sharing that, and I think that's fine as long as it's very short. But doing something live when you know the other person is live on the other side, it's why you all showed up today, even though you knew I was recording it, right? It's different when you're there live, when you know we're all in this together right now. And if I needed to, I could talk to you and you could talk to me and we can have a connection. And there's something really special about that. And young children, the first time around, there's a lot of newness, and they get right up close to the camera, or they're doing somersaults, or some of it is moderating how we support their parents in supporting the children. But the more prep we can do for it, the more thought we can do for it, it can put into it, and the more we can prepare the parents for starting it up well with their children, the better it will go. So before you ever get to, well, how many are already doing um, Zooming with children so far, already in this experience? No? Some yes? No? No? A few yeses, but mostly nos. So before you get to Zooming with children, I would suggest that you do the other pieces if you haven't already. Start off with connecting with parents around setting up routines and schedules. Think about ways of facilitating communication between home and school. Do all your teachers have a school email? Do they need a school email address? That's a big question if it's not already in place, or are you comfortable with sharing email addresses? Cell phones, most schools that I've seen the notes going out for, most schools are saying we are asking teachers to block their cell phone number if they're calling you, in order to maintain privacy. I'm an advocate for that because I think this is a time when we're already creating some fuzzy boundaries between home and school. People are seeing us in our homes. We're seeing them in their homes. They end up bonding with us differently as a result of that, and so um, I'm with our communities. We're working hard not to get too involved. We're not texting parents. We're not calling parents with all our information showing. We're trying to maintain the boundaries. I've seen a couple of schools that have more advanced phone systems than we do, where they're actually forwarding phone calls that go from the school's number to the teacher's numbers. If you have that, wonderful. Most schools I know don't, and so it's how do we continue to maintain connection? To me, being able to send a Zoom link where a parent can either call in or video in is a great way of facilitating that. And so this does facilitate parent home communication and allows for that. Um, so before you do Zooms with children, things to talk about with parents are setting up a healthy home schedule. If you have a toddler community or you have a 3 to 6 community, you'll want to give them ideas, guidelines, a rough framework of what a morning could look like, that is based around your school schedule somewhat. Um, it can be different versions of, think about what it really is like for people who aren't Montessori teachers to have their children home while they're trying to work in their home setting. It's hard enough for those of us who are Montessori educators. It's an added level. We're good with kids. We know how to run a morning, and yeah, there's an overlap when it's your own children. It's a different thing, but we still have an advantage over the typical parent who isn't used to this all the time. So thinking about their experience, they don't probably have all the little pictures that we probably have in our kitchens. And so telling them to make a pouring work with two tiny little pitchers that fit their child's hand is not going to be helpful. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we have to extrapolate our own experience into what typical parents have within their home setting. So when you're giving examples for practical life, try and think as basic as possible, or give different options for tools they could use, if those are the kinds of things you are doing. There are tons of places online now that are sharing ideas for this. I didn't pull anything together because there is so much that's already out there. The MA listserv, they're now the AMI USA Heads listserv, and the AMS Heads listserv. Both organizations have great resources that they're collecting. I believe Montessori Foundation has a group, and there are a whole bunch of new Facebook groups that have popped up, creating sharing of documents for Montessori educators who are trying to communicate out to parents. Okay, so doing the prep work, preparing the home environment. First, scheduling a Zoom meeting for parents, I think, is also necessary, if at all possible, before you start doing Zoom meetings with children. You want parents to have downloaded the app. I want to be specific with parents to say that, because Zoom gives a participant who has received an invitation to a Zoom meeting like you did today, they give you the option to attend by website or download the free app. And so we always suggest to parents that they log on using a large screened device. It could be an iPad, or a laptop or a desktop computer. And we'll tell them up front, we're going to keep everyone on mute. We're going to record this session, because then you can share it with parents who weren't able to attend, and they might have been a little bit afraid of the technology. They'll see it's not anything too scary, and that they missed kind of key information. And talk through what the basic plans are. And as much as possible, you'll see when you start looking around online for what people are doing, some schools have gone really much further in this right off the bat. My recommendation is to create reasonable goals that you know you can achieve, and you can achieve well. Start small and grow as you are successful. So week 1, maybe you decide to host every other day a morning meeting, or something like that. Or Wednesday through Friday, you're going to pilot. I like the word pilot when I'm trying out these new technologies with families. We're going to pilot morning meetings for our children. Does that make sense? So that you're preparing parents that there's a good chance, if this really doesn't work, we're going to pull the plug and try something else. I haven't heard anyone who has had to pull the plug on morning meetings, though. That one, universally, everyone has really enjoyed. You'll have some meetings that go better than others, depending on how it's managed. Prepare the parents for what to expect. Explain to them we're going to be on for about 15 minutes. We're going to sing a few songs. We're going to read a story, whatever is your designated plan. I would also encourage you at the beginning, don't give lessons. We don't advocate for group lessons in person. Why would we try to give a lesson in a virtual setting to a group of children? So think about, what I keep thinking about is Mr. Rogers. You know, I even went back when the night before we started these, I had said his name a few times. I'm like, I'm going to go back and watch. And I watched a Mr. Rogers episode from way back when, which is really comforting in a time of crisis. But also, you can really see the idea of engagement instead of entertainment. He's all about the connection. He's all about helping children to make meaning from whatever it is that he's showing. He's feeding his fish, and he's talking about the fish, and making a connection to a social interaction. Those are the kinds of life lessons that we're really going for in this kind of context, much more than, you know, we're going to count 1, 2. It's not about counting. It's not about writing, especially in a large group context. This isn't an appropriate setting. If you have very large groups, consider cutting them in half, dividing them up so that it's more manageable. At the beginning, you have that flexibility. If you start large group and you go smaller, you'll have parents who say, oh, but my child misses seeing all those other friends. It's a lot easier to ramp up into larger groups than it is to go backwards, in my experience. Make sense? Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up on questions. Which organizations? Oh, the ones that are sharing, I've seen lots on Facebook. If you look up the blog on Trillium Montessori, or look up the Trillium Montessori Facebook site, they've made 3 different groups for parents that have really nice things being shared in there. One for infants and toddlers, one for 3 to 6 Montessori parents, one for elementary Montessori parents. And then they just came out with a Montessori teachers private Facebook page where a lot more resource sharing is happening. That's a nice resource. Montessori Administrators Association, which is now AMI USA's administrator group, they are open to all for the time being. And so that they have a heads listserv that's a reasonable annual cost and worth it. AMS's heads listserv, your school needs to be an AMS member school in order to join it. But if you're a member school and not on it, make sure you get on it quickly. It's called AMS Connect for heads. And AMS can help you with that. Okay. So your prep work before you get to doing Zooms with children, again, we've talked about sharing schedules with families, sending out some information. The other prep work that we did at Seton was for both our lab schools, we created a small private Facebook group for just our families and teachers. At Seton, it's a larger school, and we have infants through age 12. And so we did one Facebook group for parents of infants and toddlers, one for early childhood students, and one for all of elementary. At our Barrington campus, it's a much smaller setting, so we just made one smaller private Facebook group. That's where when I record a parent meeting or the morning meetings, every day I post the morning meetings to that Facebook group. And so it's a private closed place. We do have no photo children, children who we don't have a photo release permission for. And for those families, as soon as we decided to go this way, we immediately reached out to them and asked for their written consent to record them on these and to post it to the private Facebook group. Does that make sense? So you want to be careful with permissions, because we're still a school, we're still an entity and can be held to our policies. I've been giving thought to how to implement for 3 to 6 parents. We'll have to remain with them throughout the Zoom session. So if you're going to host a parent meeting, then yes, I suggest you stay on the parent meeting throughout. If you are trying to set up for parents to network with each other, that's a use I haven't really explored myself. I don't know if others have. That if parents want to connect with each other and you haven't yet shared your directory, now might be a time to share your directory so that you don't have to be the facilitator of parent to parent connections during this social isolation time. We want parents to feel connected to each other. So I would definitely say you stay in. Whenever we host a meeting, whether it's for parents or for children, we make sure there's at least 2 of our staff members on each meeting. One who is already prepared with what they're going to be presenting on, and the other one who, if it's a meeting with adults, they're the ones moderating, handling all the behind the scenes part. Muting people who need to be muted, or making sure they're tracking the chat boxes and those kinds of things. If it's a meeting with children, we make sure that the teacher is there, if at all possible, the assistant is there, and we have an office person, either myself or the office manager for our smaller school are on, and we're the ones who make sure that the meeting is recorded, that the recording gets uploaded to YouTube, that we've done, and then it gets uploaded to the Facebook group. We're doing all the behind the scenes stuff. So there's always 2 people on these meetings. With parents, I think that's always key. And to make it go well for the children, it's nice if a teacher is singing a song, it's nice if there's another adult at the beginning to model singing the song. Does that make sense? If you're muted, it's fine because the children are muted too, and you can just be making the same movements and singing along while they're going. Or modeling, when she calls, the teacher will call every child's name that they can see throughout the Zoom set. One of the songs is always a name song. And so then the assistant will model what to do, what's an idea of what to do when the teacher calls your name. Then, okay, Miss Araceli, then, Miss Araceli goes like this. And then the children start going like this if you do it consistently. Does that make sense? What am I calling private Facebook groups? So within Facebook, anyone with a Facebook account can make a group. Google it, look it up. YouTube has great videos on how to do it. Facebook has nice tutorials. And you can make them private so that only people who have been invited to join or who have a particular link are able to get in. You're able to make it so that people have to request to join and you have to approve it, which is how we've done our school ones, is everyone has to request to join. And we've also made some basic rules for how to participate, that this is meant to be a sharing space, that we're not selling anything here, that it's really about maintaining connection and offering each other support. Frankly, I reached out to the Trillium folks and have used a lot of their frameworks of what they had put up online for when they created their private groups. Montessori World is really, really beautifully sharing resources right now. And so as much as you can, don't reinvent the wheel. Borrow from others, but ask before you borrow, if that makes sense. Make sure it's okay with whoever you're borrowing from. Will parents have to remain with their child during the Zoom session? If their child is younger, I would say yes. We've suggested to all our parents that they retain control of the device. If you think about the price of the devices that they're using, yes, some of our families have bought their child a tablet of some kind. I don't want to know necessarily who has done that, so I want to assume that they're all there supporting their child. I'm not requiring it though. There's no way to require it. We've had a couple of caregivers who have been on with a child. We've seen some grandparents, and we have some children who you can't see an adult, but I'm pretty sure from the way the children's eyes are moving that there's an adult in the room. Usually it's an older child who's at that point where they can sit and do their own thing. Make sense? Will the parents have to remain? No. Do your children do individual lessons via Zoom? So this is the big debate right now. We have not started doing individual lessons via Zoom, but we likely will, especially for the older children in the group. If this is going to stretch more than 2 or 3 weeks, I think there's a pretty big need for it. But before we get to that stage, what we are implementing in the coming week, last week we started with morning meetings for every group. At Seton, they did some video recordings and posted those. They did the recordings on our last day at school when we knew we weren't coming back. And so they recorded themselves on the line, singing songs, and we posted that as kind of our initial, hello, we're here. The second, for the smaller school, we've done just virtual meetings because we never went back to school to record anything. And that has gone well, but this week we're going to be launching individual parent-teacher connection opportunities via Zoom, where we're going to host, we're not calling it parent-teacher conferences, we're calling it parent-teacher connections, so that parents can come with their own questions and ask, the teachers are being asked to bring what the child had been doing in school up to this point. We had our parent-teacher conferences in February, so it's really just a quick updating on that. And then offering several suggestions of things that could be done for their particular child that are winners, that are engaging, that their child will love to do, that relate to Montessori, and that are age appropriate and all the rest. On one of our first parent meetings, one of the teachers showed an example of a home prepared environment. She set up a shelf in her house and she showed a little music, like one section of the shelf was a music area, one section of the shelf was some animals, some plastic animals, the tube animals, and talked about 10 different ways you could use those tube animals. She had another area with some plants to care for, and I don't remember what else, but every parent who attended that came back saying how helpful that was. Just the example of seeing what a little corner in their home could be, that it didn't have to be a full room, it didn't have to be a full conversion, that they don't have to do Montessori classroom at home, but that they can make small changes and make it functional. What platform do you use for scheduling meetings or individual lessons for it? We're going to talk about that. Hold on to that question. And I was told that one teacher did show and tell meeting on Zoom. So this is something, again, I would say ramp into it. First, build your culture. Once you start doing meetings with parents, if it's children 6 and under, I suggest starting with a plan for a 15-minute meeting. Give yourself a half-hour window so you have a cushion of time, but plan for a 15-minute meeting at the most. That lets everybody log in. It lets them get the routine. What we talked about doing for our first virtual meetings was we sing a greeting song that the children are familiar with. If that greeting song includes everybody's names, great, check that off. If it didn't, we're gonna sing a second song that's a hello, how are you song where we name every person who's in the group. That makes sense? So that each child has that moment of, Miss Heidi said my name. Where and they light up in such a beautiful way when they see their teachers, when they see their friends, and then when they're identified, it's like, she sees me, I'm here. So that's on day 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4, 5. We do the same 4 things. Inez, you have a question? Hold the space bar down and you can ask it. Oh, it didn't work. It didn't work.
Oh,
Try. There
hello?
you
Can
are.
you hear me? Okay, actually, I have a comment. So our school, La Casa Montessori, is doing a Zumba class every morning at 10:30. And
Ah,
all the kids in our private Facebook page, and all the kids join in, and it's being done by our Zumba instructor and the director Giselle as well. And they call all the names that they see popping up. They call, and the parents are giving us feedback, how excited, how they start jumping, how they can't believe that they call their name. So that's something that we've been doing
that's
since
great.
last week, and we'll continue to do moving forward.
That's great.
Just wanted to share
It's
that.
another way of making connection.
Yeah.
We've started a little more slowly. With one of the things that we weren't sure of, was what kind of setting are the children in? What's their physical space? What kinds of devices are they going to have? And if there's a child who's sitting up on a chair and we say now it's time to sing and dance or do the hokey pokey, I don't want to have a child without an adult right there getting up and down off an adult sized chair. Do you know what I don't want to create an unsafe setting for a child. So we've decided to ramp it a little more slowly into getting to movement. And we can talk about that because we want to. I wanted to make sure that our families were kind of ready for it. So in our first meetings, we've done a greeting song that their children are familiar with, name song. We've done the same one every day all week. Then we've read a book. And as part of the book reading, we might ask some questions. We've done it in kind of our interactive, like Mr. Rogers would do it. We ask questions that then they can continue the conversation at home. Some teachers have asked them, this book was about trucks. Why don't you take a look and see if you find any trucks and we can talk about it tomorrow. If you want to make a picture, you can bring your picture to show us tomorrow. Those kinds of things. One teacher has done a lot of emphasis around watching birds because the birds are starting to come out. And so each day she's had a different idea or a different question about the birds they see in their yard and making pictures of the birds. And she's planning for a whole gardening session uh, coming up going forward. So as we get more and more into, one thing we can do is go out for walks. So encouraging parents to do that by giving them the pointers of how to do it successfully with young children, right? And then we end with the community song. Pick a heartfelt, short and sweet song. Ours is one that we usually sing before a meal, but it talks about we are community, brothers, sisters too, and every adult who's on each of those, hearing the kids singing it, start tearing up as soon as the song goes. But that's kind of what we want. We're all lonely in this process. This idea of physical distancing means that we can't give each other a hug. So we want these experiences to feel like I just got a hug from my people, right? Um, we don't want them to actually cry. We just want them to feel like Yeah, right, you get what I'm talking about. We're not trying to pull that hard on heartstrings, but we want everyone to feel like they're connected. Um, all right. So, should teachers work from home or from the school? You will have to make the best call for yourself and your school. By what I know and what I have recommended to our staff, we are now officially, as of 5 p.m. tonight, the state of Illinois is under shelter in place. Even before that, the strong recommendation was that if at all possible, you stay home. So on our last days at school, we did a round of book pickups. If you need children's books, please take some home with you, and take familiar books and take some new books, and feel free to bleach them down, wipe them off and get everything clean, as we're doing hopefully with everything that's coming into our homes now. And we're doing these from home. This morning we did a session on creating a prepared environment at home to do this kind of work from. So I would encourage you to watch that video, and reach out if you would like additional support on ideas for that. But how do we have to recognize we're letting them into our homes and they're also letting us into theirs. You're going to see things that are cringeworthy, non-Montessori practices all the way going on at home. And this is not the moment to give any kind of feedback, any kind of suggestion. We are just giving love, guidance, support as much as we can. We're I have I've had kids confessing all their cartoon watching and movie watching, and you know parents are just getting by right now. A lot of people are just trying to figure out how to make it work. How can I do my job, which requires me to be doing all these virtual meetings when I have two young children around or more? It's a lot. It's a lot for parents. So we're at a point in society, and as Montessorians, we have to swallow that Montessori righteousness and just give love and support, because that's what will be most helpful at this point. Okay, did I get everything? Sitting down yoga and breathing. So sitting down yoga and breathing is an option. Finger plays are an option. Think about things that are very engaging to children. When I was wondering if the book reading would that be a hit for toddlers? And they love it. We're choosing toddler books. We're reading toddler books. It's short and sweet, nothing very long, but really just gentle, calm. It's like at school in so many ways. And they do similar things that they do at school, and the toddlers especially don't get the camera thing. But it's lovely in their toddlerness, you get all the fun of it. For 3 to 6 year olds, the older children definitely get it, and you get the 4-year-old truth tellers who will say, so and so, sit down. And you can see them telling. And some do want to share, so figuring out how to share appropriately, like you would in the classroom in the first days of school. I encourage the teachers to start with the older children so that they could be the models of how to share something, and then the younger children would get the idea of it. And being upfront with parents that if someone's having a hard time in one of these, we're going to remute them, or we're going to even turn off their video feed. If someone were having a temper tantrum, or we haven't had it yet, so far everyone has been fully engaged, but if someone really were to be doing something inappropriate, or to be melting down, we would the person who is moderating would shut it down. Someone else suggested sign language lessons. So start brainstorming. What are the skills that we have in our community? We have a few teachers who have specific skills. One who is preparing some art lessons, another who is preparing some science lessons, home-based science lessons. Spanish is another one, or any foreign language instruction. Again, songs, finger plays, lots of naming things, having examples of, podemos hablar en español, and we're giving vocabulary as we go along. Music, having a music session. So those are the ideas that have come up so far. And if you have others, feel free to suggest it. What about a simple scavenger hunt children can then share? So Absolutely. For example, everyone find a piece of fruit and bring it to show me. I wouldn't do it in the moment. I wouldn't say, "Hey, go find a piece of fruit and come show it to me," while we're on a live call. But I might end one call if I know I'm seeing them again the next day. I might end a call saying, today we were talking a lot about, I don't know, something about, give me an idea. We were talking a lot about birds. Tomorrow, if you draw a picture of a bird or if you hear a pretty bird call, tomorrow come back with an idea of something you can share about birds. Or maybe your mom and dad can take a picture of you feeding the birds. One of the teachers suggested stringing Cheerios on a string and putting them outside where you could see them out the window. And that got so many comments from the children about all the birds that they saw coming into their yard that they never would have paid attention to otherwise. So again, we're trying to not teach, but guide families into learning opportunities. Does that make sense? Okay. And then, so I have heard about schools that are doing private lessons, presentations, sessions with older children. I don't know, for 3-year-olds, it really would be practical life, sensorial kind of oriented things. For older children, I have seen teachers presenting sounds. Um, I've seen teachers working on handwriting in individual sessions. We haven't piloted this yet, so I don't have a format to share with you. But those are things that Montessorians are starting to explore. So I would, again, suggest joining some of those Facebook groups and staying hooked in with the community. Okay. All right, I'm going to show you another function of Zoom. I'm going to share my screen, so hold with me. We didn't talk about it for this one. I know we've talked about it for other sessions, but Zoom right now is offering free video conferencing for schools. And so if your school would like a free account, you can go to Zoom and there's a place here. You click here to learn more about hosting a free Zoom account for your school where you don't have the time limit and you can have more people participating in your sessions. So here is a photo shared by one of our families of her older child who is 4 years old and in our school. This is on day 3 of video. We call them morning meetings. Her teacher is reading a story to them, and her younger brother, who is under 2 still, is joining in. But they've figured out how to put it on their big screen, and so they're watching Miss Rukmal on the TV, which I thought was a nice example. So the computer is there so that the children are still apparent. They can still be seen, if that makes sense. And then I had another photo of, this is one of our morning meetings with the toddler group, and they're singing songs. They're reading. It's not Brown Bear, it's the other one, but one of a very familiar book. And it really has been lovely. Which book?
From Head to Toe.
Thank you, thank you. And so that was the first one where we had movement incorporated in. Children were showing how they could put their heads down like the donkey and kick their leg up and those kinds of things. Again, we're just new into this, but a nice example. And then some were asking about what we have been doing. So this is our Zoom meeting schedule for next week. Last week we only did morning meetings, and in the afternoons we offered open office hours for parents for an hour in the afternoons where the teachers were online available. Very few parents took advantage of that, and we figured out it was a little bit of we were too intimidating, and they didn't want to come with their kind of big questions or challenges necessarily to a place where other parents might be or where so many teachers were sitting. So for next week, we're creating these family-specific Zoom sessions that are parent connections, is what we're calling them, parent-teacher connection meetings. But we are continuing with morning meetings. Each class is scheduled for a 15-minute morning meeting, but you can see there's a 15-minute cushion in between because we're using only one Zoom account for this school's programs. They have 3 classrooms. So the Willow Room, the Oak Room, and the Maple Room each has their own 15-minute time frame. Maple is the toddler group, and the other 2 classrooms are 3 to 6-year-olds. We're also piloting doing Spanish and music in the afternoons, alternating. This is for children. It's for 15 minutes again, and we'll see how that goes. We're hosting a meeting for parents on Monday night, where we're going to talk through what the plan for the week is, the parent-teacher connection meetings, and answer any questions that they have. And then on Thursday afternoon, we're going to have an idea sharing time where the teachers are coming prepared with some simple games you can do at home, you can create, some ideas for activities, and work of the home, practical life that parents could be doing. Someone asked if it's a good idea to share YouTube videos with parents of Montessori lessons. Honestly, it really depends on the parent and depends on the child's need for the Montessori lesson. Are there other ways that we can help them figure out how to get the same ideas across? I might change my tune on that, but I'm not a fan of, I don't know that parents have to recreate Montessori at home. They're not trained for this. They don't know how to facilitate it. And they're as likely to take the child in an incorrect direction by what Montessori standards would be, just because they don't have the orientation for it. So the things that I'm encouraging parents to do are things that are kind of familiar to them around the house. If they're wanting to do counting activities, we can encourage them to create something like cards and counters, show them how to have a little rug, have them put numbers out on Post-it notes. Post-it notes are one of the most useful home material making tools that parents can have, or index cards, same thing. But I wouldn't call it cards and counters, and I wouldn't assume that the child is going to understand all the concepts that are underneath cards and counters because I've sent a copy of a lesson or a YouTube video to them on cards and counters. Does that make sense? So I might I might do my own write-up, or I might do my own description to a parent of, last week he was really interested in counting the numbers 1 to 9. You could have a basket of 45 objects. First of all, normal parents, normal people don't have 45 of the same objects sitting around in their house. I have one parent who, the teacher said this in one of their meetings. She posted on our Facebook group that she found a bag of Taco Bell spice packets, and that was her object that she had 45 of. So she very proudly showed her child doing cards and counters with Taco Bell sauce packets. Hey, it worked. She did it, and it got the message across, and her child is able to count and enjoy spicy food. So our homes are not like everybody else's homes. At least if you're like me and the other educators I work with, we tend to have lots of extra supplies in our homes. We have the small stuff that we loved for children, that we had for our own children, that we never let go of because it was just the perfect little picture set. And normal people don't have that. So think about the typical American household and what they might have available to them whenever you're suggesting anything that they could be doing at home. Does that make sense? That's my take on it as of right now. Give it a week or two and we might be doing different things, but for now that's where we're at. Other questions or comments? That's pretty. Oh, someone had asked about how we're doing signups for parents. I showed it on an earlier video, but we are using just a Google Doc with a table in it and asking parents to add their names and email addresses. There are great free and paid services you can also use. Sign Up Genius is the one that we use the most probably, but there are other services out there. This is just cheap, easy. Most parents are familiar with Google as an application. I'm gonna thank everyone for coming and pause and stop the recording, because at this point we have